Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the top 16 cornerback rankings of the 2025 NFL Draft. We're also going to talk about a few honorable mentions at the top of this. You can't find my rankings videos for other positions I've already done out there. Linebacker, offensive tackle, running back, interior defensive line. There are links in the description to those, as well as links in the description to my website and to my Discord channel, where you can find things like my big board, my previous mock drafts, my 1.0, 2.0, those big ones if you haven't seen those, and the Discord channel, where you can find my strengths, weaknesses, other notes for every player that I've scouted, etc. But without further ado, let's just get on into this. The important stuff here, the honorable mentions to begin with, and above me, you will be able to see any athletic and measurables testing when relevant as well for these players that I am covering. So right now you can see, my number 23 prospect up there. You can see those measurables. Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith comes to us out of USC. He is an ultra-sticky man-coverage nickel prospect who may be both too small and too unathletic to succeed at the next level. Consensus has him just outside of being drafted. I have a 6th round draft grade on him because I think that he'll be a long-time contributor as a depth piece, even though he may never be a full-time starter. And there's that outside chance that he could buck the odds and be a really solid starter. So I won't be looking at the camera too much. I'm going to read what I have written down already because that's going to be better than if I'm talking off of the top of my tongue, and it'll be quicker that way as well. I also want to let you know I would love to keep add footage into these videos of the players, making some plays, highlighting things that I might highlight about them. But I messed with that before. It's so sloppy. I don't know which teams I can and cannot show. I think I kind of know, but I don't know. It's an absolute headache, and I don't want to get on the bad side of YouTube and have strikes put up on my channel. I don't know where that line kind of lies with that kind of thing, so I just don't mess with it, unfortunately. But you can obviously go and find some video of these guys out on YouTube by this point in the offseason. My number 22 prospect is Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State. He's a versatile slot/safety kind of guy who should transition nicely to the NFL. He rarely misses a tackle. I have a late 5th, early 6th round draft grade on him. Just, I think, a solid prospect. And my number 21 prospect is Mac McWilliams out of UCF, University of Central Florida. This is a full-on my guy in this draft. He's a plus athlete in a small package who has great mechanics. Mac is a developmental slot defensive back with the flexibility dependent upon the system to pitch in on the perimeter in an emergency. He is the consensus-ranked 256th player, at least as of the time of prepping this video, which would put him one spot ahead of being Mr. Irrelevant. However, I have a 5th round draft grade on him. That's going to bring us on to some notable names that you will not see in my top 16 list. And that list is Dorian Strong out of Virginia Tech. I have a 4th round draft grade on him. That's a little bit lower than some people. Quincy Riley out of Louisville, 4th round draft grade on him. Once again, too, a lot of people like him quite a bit. I'm just a little bit lower on him. Didn't quite see it as much as others have, or as much as some of these other guys as well. And then Denzel Burke out of Ohio State. I forgot the E there. That should be Ohio State. Early 5th, late 4th, early 5th, more so. I'm thinking like early 5th round draft grade on him. Just a really, really rough season for a guy who had much higher expectations coming into this draft cycle before the 2024 season, but the year did not go so well for him. That's going to bring us on to my 16 through 14 prospects. Going to lump these three together. You got O'Donnell Fortune out of South Carolina, Zy Alexander out of LSU, and Mello Dotson out of Kansas. All of these guys, I have like an early day 3 grade on them. That meaning like an early 4th round grade on him, which means technically I have a late 3rd, early 4th round draft grade on them. But where I'm targeting these guys, like after day 2, looking at who's still left, and I see these 3 names or any number of these 3 names out there, and I'm saying, gosh, I sure hope they fall to me. I sure hope, I'm thinking about moving up for them. That's where I'm really trying to target these guys, would be that early 4th round time period. All 3 of these guys I really, really like a lot. They're once again, guys who are like, borderline my guys, are my guys. I like them a lot. The big concern for them is that there are some athletic limitations that may hold them back from success at the next level. As you can see with that testing right up above me, a lot of red, a lot of gray. That's not good. That's like the opposite of elite. Red being very bad, orange being below average, kind of is how those are represented. And so that's not a good signs for them. Athleticism does matter at the next level. Sometimes maybe it's more of like a threshold thing than exactly how good a player is going to be. But at a certain point, if you're not enough of an athlete, you just cannot compete out there amongst a bunch of other athletes. That's just the case. In one word or two, what makes these guys different? We've said what makes them similar is that lack of athleticism, in a sense, is some of the similarities. But then what makes them unique as players? For O'Donnell Fortune, I think that he plays really smart, has some good football IQ. For Zay Alexander, I think that he plays a real physical game, if that's what you're looking for. He's the type of guy who can do that for you a little bit later in the draft if you missed on some of those other guys earlier. And then Mello Dotson does a really nice job of playing the ball. He's had 9 turnovers in the last 2 seasons. So those are 16 through 14 in that order. Fortune, Alexander, Dotson, I believe. And that's going to bring us on to my number 13 prospect, Kobe Bryant. I have a 3rd round draft grade on him. 6 foot, 176 pounds, coming out of Kansas. Kobe is coming out as a senior with a lot of experience. He started for 3 years, but he also got a lot of work his freshman season. He has steadily improved year over year, but he's still an unrefined product. What he lacks in technique, he makes up for in pure, unbridled, physical, scrappy play. Kansas likes a certain type of player, and Kobe is very much in the same mold as Andrew Phillips was coming out of last year's draft, and he had a good first season with the New York Giants. So Kobe Bryant, definitely in that category of being like a my guy this season, as Andrew Phillips was a strong my guy, one of the top my guys of the draft last season, very much in that same mold. Like him a lot, and I'm excited about him. That's going to bring us on to my number 12 prospect in Zay Frazier, 6'3", 188 pounds, coming out of UTSA. That's the University of Texas San Antonio. The Roadrunners. You can see right behind him, that logo, that's a little Roadrunner sticking behind his image. Currently, I have a 3rd round draft grade on Zay Frazier. As of prepping for this video, he was ranked as high as he's ever been on the consensus board at prospect number 118. So he may be higher by the time that this video comes out. Apparently, the secret is already out on him because his stock is soaring. He was the 280th ranked prospect less than a month ago. I was already high on him, so another guy, he's a my guy. And you're going to hear me call quite a few of these guys my guys, and it just has to do with the fact that, I like a lot of cornerbacks. It's one of the positions that I feel comfortable seeing the vision for them at the next level. Also, linebackers, safeties, running backs, or other positions where you'll see me give a lot of them my guys. These are just kind of my favorite positions in the NFL, most notably linebacker and safety. I absolutely love those positions. Growing up, I was, the hard-hitting guys, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Ravens, for periods of time like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, San Francisco when they had Patrick Willis, Carolina when they had Luke Kuechly. All these guys these positions are ones that either I liked a lot growing up and still like, or like the cornerback position, wide receiver position, of course everybody likes wide receivers, are just positions that I feel pretty comfortable with seeing the vision. Anyways, Zay Frazier, he's been a my guy since day one of the scouting process. He is 6'3", 188 pounds with long arms. He has all of the physical tools. Add to the fact that he's a great athlete, 9.68 RAS. Yes, a guy with all of the biggest knock on him is his man coverage ability, but I think that that's something that he can figure with the tools that he has. It's really something that he wasn't asked to do a lot, and I just think a little bit of coaching up, and in no time, that will be a thing of the past for him. Like I said, there's very little reason why he shouldn't be able to be a good man coverage corner. That is going to bring us on to my number 11 prospect in Noah Williams. Another my guy type of guy. Currently, he's my 84th ranked prospect, just over 6 foot, just shy of 200 pounds, coming out of Cal. He's a less athletic Marshawn Lattimore. If you're looking to add someone who can take on a big, true X type of receiver, Noel is your man. He can handle them without getting overwhelmed. He's coming out as a fifth-year senior, 3-year starter with about 4 years of starting experience in reps. He took a jump forward from his first year in 2023 at Cal to his second year at Cal in 2024, a transfer to Cal prior to that. His biggest problem is that he can play himself out of position, and unlike Marshawn Lattimore, he doesn't have the athletic ability to recover when he does that. And you're actually going to see this with maybe like 2 more prospects, that issue of like being a little bit overly aggressive, basically. That's going to bring us on to my number 10 prospect in Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State, 5'10", 193 pounds. And he's coming out as a junior with 2 years of starting experience. He's played along the perimeter, but I think that he's most likely going to have to move into the slot at the next level, and he should be able to make that move seamlessly. I'm late to the party on Jacob Parrish because the first time that I scouted him, I misdiagnosed a portion of his game, and that left me believing that he lacked a home position in the NFL, and then that pushed him lower on my board, not really seeing the vision for where he would play at the next level. But with that fear being gone, I'm now a big fan of Jacob Parrish. He sticks in the hip pocket of receivers in man coverage, and his athletic profile suggests that he'll be able to continue to do so at the next level. He just needs to rein it in sometimes. He can be overly aggressive. That said, that should be less of an issue out of the slot than it was on the perimeter for him. I have more faith. I think that he's going to transition to the perimeter better even maybe than he played transition to the slot better than he played at in the perimeter in college even. So a lot of upside for Jake Parrish at the next level. I don't know if he cares to be called Jake or not. That's going to bring us on to my number 9 prospect in Darian Porter out of Iowa State, 6'3", 196 pounds. You can see he's got really good size there. All that blue, that's elite measurements, or just, well above average. Currently, he's my 67th ranked prospect. Darian finishes his collegiate career as a 1-year starter his senior season. He's still in development, but he's already good. I don't think that he'll ever be the guy you ask to play shadow coverage. Instead, he's the guy that you ask to hold down the fort on one side of the field, one big swathing area of the field. You say, hey, just cover this area, and that's going to open up the rest of your defense to allow you to get a little bit creative with them. And did I mention that out of 2,500 previous cornerbacks, he is the 4th most athletic according to his RAS. He tied with Maxwell Harrison on my own athletic testing system, both of them being best of class as terms of athletes, and Max Harrison, somebody who we'll be getting to in a short little bit. Let's bring us on to my number 8 prospect, Azariah Thomas, 6'1.5", 194 pounds, coming to us out of Florida State University. Currently, he is my 46th ranked prospect. Azariah comes out as a junior with 2 years worth of reps. And if I am saying his name incorrectly, I really do apologize. I know it's not Azariah, but I sometimes get a little bit wrong potentially. So if you talk to him and you call him the wrong name, I guess you can blame me for that, and also let him know, though, that I apologize and I'm trying to get it correctly pronounced. I do think that it's important and respectful to try to get the pronunciation of these players' names correctly, so that's why I do put an emphasis on that and try to apologize when I'm not 100% sure, so or confident in exactly what's coming out of my mouth in terms of the pronunciation. Anyways, he was utilized plenty both as a freshman and a sophomore season before becoming a full starter in 2024. Remember, 2 years worth of reps in total. He's had a strong draft process, mostly by impressing throughout the Senior Bowl practices. He's another one of those guys that you're going to ask to go match up against the other team's ex-receiver to hopefully shut them down. He doesn't have the best long speed, that could be an issue, and he is not the bounciest player. But he does have some really nice hip flip for a guy his size, and that's going to help to keep him in good position, hopefully at the next level as well, but helped him in college for sure. That's bring us on to my number 6B prospect. 7 prospects, 6B. Got a bit of a tie here at 6 between Trey Amos and somebody else, but Trey Amos comes to us out of Ole Miss, 6'1", 195 pounds. Currently, I have him ranked as my 40th overall prospect, and he is currently 40th on the consensus board, which is the highest that he's ever been on the consensus board, and he could be higher by the time that this video gets released. I'll be sad if I end up being lower than consensus on him, but I mean, he's my guy. I really like him. So going back to day one of learning about this draft class, he was the guy who I thought would be like my vying for the cornerback 2, technically because of Travis Hunter in this draft class. I thought he was going to be the my guy of this draft class. Not quite there, but I still like him a lot. He was fairly quickly overtaken, however, by who you'll see as my number 2 ranked cornerback. If you follow my stuff, you know who that is. He's a 5th-year senior who's been on a few different schools throughout the portal, and he's improved every step of the way. He's highly experienced and well-rounded. I have very few negatives or concerns with Trey. I like that he rides the line of being overly aggressive without quite getting there. However, his little flaws do work together to create a rather serious flaw in his game, and I'm starting to count this as a more serious flaw the further we get, because obviously, the higher that we're taking these guys, the more serious their flaws are, the more weight that they carry, and this is going to come down to kind of being overly aggressive. When he gets caught out of position from playing an overly aggressive style of play, he doesn't have the acceleration or the explosiveness in order to make up for it. And the reason that I call this like a serious flaw is you look at those numbers, you look at that 1.6 10-yard split, that short area acceleration, you look at the vert, that explosive number, and those do back up what you see on tape, that lack of ability to recover when he gets caught out of position. And that's how you let up big plays. And obviously, if you're allowing big plays too often, you're just a liability and you can't be on the field. So hopefully that's something that he can limit going forward. I do have some amount of faith of him being able to limit that going forward. And I do think maybe a little better conditioning could go a long ways for him, as well as making that less of a flaw in his game. When it does happen, maybe he can get a little bit better in his recovery speed. That's going to bring us on to my 6A prospect in Benjamin Morrison, 6 foot 193 pounds, coming out of Notre Dame. Currently, I have him ranked as my 39th prospect. A guy who I think very well could be the first, I'd say second best cornerback in this draft class if it wasn't for his medical red flag. But he's coming out as a junior who started all 3 years at Notre Dame. Unfortunately, he did suffer a major, serious season-ending injury last year, a hip injury that ended his season. He had surgery to repair his labrum, it's the hip, it's the cartilage that's outside the rim of the hip joint socket, and that does concern me for a cornerback, especially one whose biggest asset was his hip fluidity. That's what allowed him to stay in the hip pocket of receivers without any effort. Once again, just smooth as butter. His nickname is the seat belt. Truly, no matter what the wide receiver is doing, he's step for step with them all the time on tape. Nonetheless, if the medical staff gives him the green light, then you're going to be drafting a guy with spectacular talent if he returns to that previous level of play. That's just where my concern lies. The thing that you should not expect from his game is the big splash plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's very patient, and although nothing gets behind him, stuff can happen in front of him. So, huge fan of Benjamin Morrison. I forgive him. I really like guys who get aggressive, make plays behind the line of scrimmage, don't let stuff necessarily happen in front of them, but I forgive Benjamin Morrison because he is so good at sticking in the hip pocket of receivers in coverage, shutdown kind of cornerback. That's going to bring us on to my number 5 prospect in Maxwell Hairston. Currently, he is my 26th ranked prospect. He is 39th on the consensus board, and that's as high as he has ever been throughout this entire process, and he might be higher by the time that this video is released. Max is coming out as a junior, a second-year starter. He doesn't have the most experience because he has missed a big chunk of the 2024 season due to an injury. He ended up coming back, though, obviously, and he tested at the combine and everything. His lack of reps is evident when it comes to his lack of being a technician. He can clean up some things, beginning with his footwork. Nonetheless, he's an athletic freak, which can make up for some of that lack of technician ability. The pink elephant in the room with him is a major allegation from a few years ago. People freak out about it because the case is still quote-unquote open. if you've ever watched a true crime show or listened to a true crime podcast, you would know that cases tend to remain open unless there is a clear conviction, through the court system and everything. And even then, cases can remain open or be reopened in the future. I have no clue if the allegation was true or not. I'll let the NFL teams do their homework and figure that out. They're much more better equipped to do that. In terms of my mock drafts and his ranking in my overall rankings here, I'm just going to keep my eyes out and my ears to the ground for those who do have real legit NFL sources and see if they're saying anything, if it's impacting his stock with them. And up to this point, it doesn't seem to have done so. As I said, he's only been rising. If I begin to see him slide backwards amongst those types of sources, those types of people who have good sources, I'll assume that there is something probably related to this incident that is causing that, and then I will react by lowering him within my rankings, stop even thinking about taking him at the end of the first round in mock drafts, etc. But until that day happens, I'm going to assume that the NFL is not overly concerned, and so far that seems to be the case. Doesn't mean it won't hurt his stock at all, but it seems like the majority of the NFL so far has not found any true reason to be overly concerned about those allegations and whatnot. That brings us on to the number 4 prospect in Savone Ravel, 6'2", 191 pounds. And you did hear that correctly. I did not pronounce the H at all, not even a little bit. Like Njoku, kind of start the mouth with an N sound. I don't actually say the N, but Njoku. Savone Ravel, just pretend the H does not exist at all. Apparently is how it is pronounced. And it's a long O-own. So, 6'2", 190, and Ravel, I'm actually not. It might be Ravel. That I'm not 100% on. Let's see here. 26th ranked prospect out of East Carolina University, 6'2", 191 pounds. I feel like I said that 3 times, but now he's coming out as a junior who also has medical red flags attached to him. He tore his ACL his junior year. That's obviously not good, but I'm told that players usually return back to their previous level of play after ACL tears these days. Every year, less and less. ACL tears are, a concern in terms of players' abilities to return from them. But it can take a little while to get to that point. The younger, the higher the chance and the quicker the recovery. So that's working in favor of him. Still a young guy. Savone is a big physical player, and he uses all 6'2" of his frame in order to make plays. He is a tone setter. That's what I like about him a lot. And that does unfortunately come with some drawback for him. He's had 11 flags in just a little bit over a year of play as a starter. And that is, that's not optimal. A big part of why every time I look at my 4th through 6B, even 7th cornerback rankings prospects, it comes down to, for Savone Ravel, and why he might not be my 4th ranked prospect, is that issue. That's pretty big. So every time I look at him, I want to mix him out, and I'm talking about Savone Ravel, talking about Maxwell Harrison, Benjamin Morrison, Trey Amos, even Azariah Thomas a little bit gets into that argument, but really those 4 could mix them up in any order. I would say Maxwell Harrison is the one where I would think about putting Azariah Thomas over him, just because they're totally different players, so it really depends which flavor you want between the two of them. That's going to bring us on to my next prospect here, though. A bit of a drop off from those guys to Will Johnson, 6'2", 194 pounds, out of Michigan. He is my 16th ranked prospect as of filming this video. He's currently the 12th ranked prospect on the consensus board, and that's the lowest that he's been since the start of this year, 2025, since the start of the 2024 college season, I believe. Since draft rankings first dropped for this class, I think he has always been very, very high up there. When I came onto the scene, he was the clear-cut, no doubt, number 1 true cornerback prospect, we'll say, outside of, possibly Travis Hunter, depending on what you think of him. I watched him, and frankly, I just didn't see it on tape. I was watching his 2024 tape very quickly. People said, you gotta watch his it's the 2023 tape, but I'll talk about this in some other videos too. that's fine and dandy, but I do care most about the most recent season, and I find that people most often do care the most about the most recent season, unless it's a guy like Will Johnson, where they're like thinking it's a top 10 guy. It takes people a lot more convincing to move off of those types of strong convictions, those types of expectations for players, than it does for a third round prospect who has a terrible season. Okay, well, now he's 6th, 7th round. Easy. No thought about it. So I just kind of want to point that out as to why it's been a long, slow fall for Will Johnson. I don't think that his 24 tape ever said top 10 cornerback. And people did not agree with me early on in the process. Now they tend to be agreeing with me. In fact, sometimes you're seeing him fall into the 20s in some people's mock drafts. Before we know it, I'm going to be the high guy on Will Johnson, and I don't want to be that. Sometimes I trust those who are better at this, have more experience at this draft thing than myself. I've only been doing it intensely, as more than a hobby, I should say, for a few years now, and every year I gain more trust. So I did not trust them in terms of him being a top 5 player. I did not trust them in terms of him being a top 10 player, and I did not even think that he's a guaranteed top 15 prospect when that was kind of like, well, okay, yeah, his 2024 tape isn't that great. Maybe he falls just shy out of the top 10 or something like that. But I do trust the fact that I'm probably missing something when I watch his tape, especially considering I'm watching his 2024 stuff mostly. I do think that he's good. I do think that he's a first-round talent, but if it hasn't been made clear by now, I have a back end of round 1 tape grade on him. That's the same grade that I gave Max Harrison upon a first watch. That's lower than my tape grade for 5 other cornerbacks in this class. And you add in leadership qualities, a big plus for Will, off-field stuff, injuries, and then that's where I am a little bit higher on Will Johnson than some of those other guys who maybe, could be higher than him in my rankings. And once again, I do want to say, some of the strengths here. I mean, I think that he is a very smart player. I think that he has great instincts, and I think that he has really good mechanics. And with those 3 things, you can go pretty far in the NFL. But what actually concerned me the most about his game when I watched his tape was that I felt like a lot of the time what he does would draw flags at the next level in the NFL. And I'm surprised that I haven't heard anyone else mention this because I think it's really, really apparent. But I would implore you to go watch some of his highlights, especially like the 2024 stuff. Some of his biggest plays of the season, and I think that you'll agree that he could easily be thrown, flags would be thrown on him at the NFL level. So I do want to mention Will Johnson. For some reason, Levis has been in my head this whole time, and I almost got through it without saying Levis, but Will is coming out as a junior, and he started all 3 years at Michigan. So obviously, highly well-thought-of prospect from the time that he came into college. I just don't know that he's ended it as well. It's tough. He's a guy who's had a lot of injuries, but then that's part of the profile. He has had a lot of injuries. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? That's a big thing too. So all these things just, to me, not a top 10 guy. This year, not a top 10 guy, can still go in the top 10. I will say that. That's going to bring us on to my number 2 prospect in Jahdae Barron, 5'11", 194 pounds, out of Texas University. Barron is my 4th ranked prospect overall. He's currently the 16th ranked prospect on the consensus board. That's the highest that he's ever been since ever. I'm quite sure with the process, but definitely since the beginning of the 2025 year. When I started with this class, he was seen as an early second-round prospect, really not even sniffing the first round, though, just solidly, like that's where he was kind of being placed. Jahdae Barron is my favorite prospect of this entire draft. He is a my guy, another one, but he is like the my guy of this draft class, just like Quinyon Mitchell was with last year's class, just like I latched on to Quinyon Mitchell before everyone else did in the 2024 draft cycle. I do like my guys to be guys who I latch on to before anybody convinces me that they're good. They're guys who I've come to the conclusion that I really like this guy. Barron played at the safety position as a sophomore at Texas. Then he played in the slot position as a junior, and he moved out to the perimeter last year as a fifth-year senior. He succeeded and improved each step of the way. Actually, where I like him the most in the slot kind of role was his worst rated year via PFF. Jade plays the way that I want guys in my secondary to play. He's high flying. He's all over the place. He's fearless. He's aggressive. He plays physically. He gets behind the line of scrimmage and he blows up plays for big losses. And he gets dirty against the run. Those are what I love from my cornerback, and specifically in the slot. And it makes sense. Jade is a guy who can play a little bit of linebacker for you in like nickel, positions, down and distance types of situations where you don't need as big of a body in that nickel, in that linebacker role, stuff like that. Jade can fill in there just fine. You can have some sub packages where you do that kind of thing with him because of his play style. And you go back to what I said, like my favorite positions really in the entire NFL being the linebacker and safety positions, and my favorite players being hard-hitting linebackers and safeties most often of the past, of my youth. And it makes sense why I'm so high up on a guy like Jahdae Barron, because that's his play style. He is that safety linebacker type of guy who can play at safety and can even go out and play along the perimeter if asked to. I just don't think that's where you're going to get the most out of him, but it could be a guy who will graduate to that in a few years, as the NFL does tend to still find that to be a higher priority, which makes enough sense. I get it. But this should bring me kind of into a comp for him. Personally, he reminds me of L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed was my guy when he came out. That was before I was big into drafting. I just kind of looked at the measurables and picked out players that I liked. But I think that he could be a L'Jarius Sneed 2.0. That's my comp for him. L'Jarius Sneed 2.0. And yes, that means the better version of L'Jarius Sneed. By the way, when you're using 2.0, 3.0, that means it's a better version. Don't just use that as like, oh, I think he's the next coming. Say the next coming up, because that's not how 1.0, 2.0 means. That means it's the next updated, upgraded version, the better than the previous. Going back to the comp here of L'Jarius Sneed, L'Jarius Sneed is a guy who you may recall just a year ago was considered a top 5 cornerback in the NFL by Mendy. I really, really, really like Jahdae Barron and think that the sky is not even the limit for him. The moon isn't even the limit for him. He could overshoot the moon and go well beyond and head for the sun, and hopefully he doesn't burn up in the sun. The concern for him is that on a scale of physical to too physical, he does lie somewhere between Trey Amos and Will Johnson, and as you may recall, Trey Amos was a prospect who I said rides the line of being too physical, and Will Johnson was a guy who I said crossed that line and was too physical for the next level, which basically means that I think that his style of play at the college level would probably get a few too many flags. That said, I do think that he's incredibly smart. Every time I listen to him, I've moved him up my rankings. I can't move him up anymore from number 4. There's 3 guys who are in elite territory. Jahdae Barron's just like on the cusp of that, and I really just like him a lot. But he's a really smart guy. He takes the game seriously, really mature, all that good stuff that I do think that he will quickly learn what the limits are of how physical he can and cannot play based on the rules and how the game is called at the next level, to where that's not a big fear of mine for Jahdae Barron, but it is something to be, weary of at the very least. So that is it for now. We've still got my number 1 ranking. No surprise there, right? Travis Hunter, just over 6 feet, 188 pounds. He's my number 1 overall ranked prospect. He's my number 1 cornerback prospect. I think that Travis is already an elite corner, and he still has room to grow and learn more about the position. He won't be able to go full-time on both sides of the ball, so please shut up with that nonsense, to be perfectly honest. I'm not here to talk about the wide receiver abilities, but obviously his ability to play on both sides of the ball is a part of his profile, and you can hear more about that in my upcoming rankings video, which will be the wide receiver position. As a cornerback, he is versatile in terms of scheme. He'll give you the best against the run. He plays with high energy, and that's despite playing on both sides of the ball for every down for entire games for entire seasons. I know that I already said this, but it bears repeating. He still has room to grow, and he already has great instincts. Part of that does come from the fact that he was playing as a wide receiver as well. He has the best ball skills of maybe any cornerback prospect ever. His size does bring some limitations to his play style and what you should be asking of him. Keep that in mind in terms of what you're going to be asking of him. He is slight. And on a similar note, he does have a bit of an injury history, and I don't think that you can ignore that in terms of how much you're thinking of asking from him as a two-way player. I think you can get something from him on both sides of the ball, but don't be getting greedy with that for a lot of reasons. Finally, I heard the comp Champ Bailey get tossed out in terms of Travis Hunter, and you don't like to use comps of players that are that elite, but it's also tough to argue against it. It's kind of a good comp for Travis Hunter in a lot of ways. So that is that. Those are my cornerback rankings. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Who did you like? Who did you not like? Who are you higher on? Who you're not higher on? Once again, there are groupings of these players. Most notably, you get to the Savone Ravel, Max Harrison, Benjamin Morrison, Trey Amos, Ezra Thomas. I wouldn't get too picky about that group. They could be mixed up in any order, and I wouldn't argue against that. So thank you very, very much for tuning on in. If you made it to the end, you're definitely give it a like. I think I earned it then. Peace out. Have a good one. Appreciate you. Look for more content coming soon. Bye-bye.